we look at things in a certain way, and certainly fathers, that when you really think about like what the age my parents had me at, and what was I doing at that age. And,
yeah, I think that all the time.
And you're just like, how the fuck
why did I expect them to know what they were doing?
Well, that's a good way to look at it.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I don't.
Well, that's what I always say. I say, like, when your parents say they did the best they can,
yeah,
they didn't. They did what they could.
That's a great way of putting it. You did what you could. Yeah. You could have tried harder, maybe.
Some things, there was some things.
But then, you have kids, and Declan was a great kid, but then Liam comes along, and Liam is the subject of a different kind of cool because, you watched it. When Liam was 7, he's going to be 16 in the fall. But when he was 7, he was diagnosed with autism.
But what my question in looking at the show and in your experience and how you portrayed it in the show was that, I mean, it must have been something must have been apparent before 7. I mean, how strong was the denial on your part? Because you talk about that you were adverse to having him tested.
Yeah, I didn't want him labeled. Because once he's labeled for life. And I didn't know at that time that we could control the label, that it didn't have to be what I thought it was going to be. There was some denial now looking back. You don't know you're in denial.
No, I was just curious when I was watching it because it seemed like
he was always a smart kid. He was always one of these kids, he started reading at 4.
Yeah.
I say in the play, he walked behind my wife and read an ad out of the newspaper from top to bottom at 4.
Right.
And words that were, but there was some social problems, issues with him. And so it got to the point where we needed help. And in the 2nd grade, we had him tested. And they said he's autistic.
What kind of social problems?
Perseverating on topics.
I hear that word a lot because my girlfriend works with autistic kids.
There you go.
Perseverating, where it's a repetition.
Same thing. Talk about the same thing over and over. An interest in one thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of autistic kids are interested in trains, railroad trains.
Is that true?
Yeah. Don't know why. But Liam he's grown out of that, but was way into trains. Doesn't look at you when he talks to you. It's like stuff I talk about in the play. Like when we're talking to each other and I'm saying something, you nod your head.
Yeah.
Where'd you learn how to do that?
Right.
That's through osmosis.
Right.
Your parents didn't say nod your head when somebody talks to you.
Just being enculturated.
He didn't pick that stuff up.
Uh-huh.
So he has to learn that stuff.
Right.
For years, we tried to get him to ask questions. And I don't know if I talk about this in the play. But we wanted him to ask a question, because he would just talk to you about his day, what he'd been doing. And so we try to have conversations. And the question we wanted him to ask was, how was your day? And I just worked on that forever and ever and ever with his therapist, with occupational therapists.
Now, is that about actually being able to have concern or to be taught to listen to someone else?
It's a really weird situation because he has to fit into a certain degree to function in society. I don't want him to change. That's the lesson I learned, is that I don't want him to change. I want him to stay as this person that he is, which is completely different and unique, and honestly, a really different kind of cool.
Right.
But he has to function in society.
He's authentic.
Yeah, he's one of a kind.
Right.
He is. Well, you talk to him and you go, wow, this kid he's interesting, he's funny, but he's different.
Right.
But he has to fit into society. And this is the thing, as a parent, when I'm gone, I want him to be able to function. And there are certain things that you have to do to function. And one is to engage other people.
Now, in terms of, there was something about, like, I've known peculiar people, and in comedy.
Tell me about it. I can tell you, and they call it on the spectrum. That's the autistic spectrum.
I've met a lot of guys growing up.
I can point guys that are on the spectrum to you that we both know and say,
sure.
him.
Yeah, they're savant-like. They have a certain brilliance around certain areas, but they have a complete blind side to other areas. Yeah. And there were people I grew up with that had that before this diagnosis became as broad as it is.
Prevalent as it is now. 1 in every 110 kids is diagnosed.
And a lot of them are very bright.
Yeah.
1 out of every 10 is on the spectrum. Explain that.
What is 1 out of every 110.
110. So what is that spectrum? I mean, the spectrum goes
from kids who sit in the corner and don't have any control of anything, can't speak, to Asperger's kids, which are at the far end of the spectrum, who can tell you anything you want to know about the cosmos.
Right.
They might have 1 or 2 areas that they're experts
complete
in at
obsessive
14
interest.
years old.
Yeah.
And Liam is probably on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, Rain Man, and 10 being Asperger's. Liam's probably a 7 or an 8.
And there's physicality issues as well?
He does a lot of stimming. It's called stimming, where he'll shake his hands real violently, or he'll jump up and down, or he'll make a fist and push it into his forehead sometimes. And I ask him why he does that, and he says it just kind of relieves the pressure. It's like...
It makes perfect sense.
It does, because we do it.
Sure we do.
Whether it's, ugh!
Yeah.
Or jumping up or
damn it.
punching something.
Yeah.
And I'll
Or
say to him...
exercising.
And he'll say to me, he'll say to me, I'm stimming a lot today.
Yeah.
And it breaks your heart sometimes, because he'll say to me, Dad, I know this autism causes me to do this, and I want it to stop.
Yeah.
But I'll say to him, look, it's what makes you creative. The kid's written a Simpsons script. He's created a whole town in his head of people that are actually, you know what I mean? He's just got this great imagination that I don't want to squelch, that I was trying to for a while.
Well, the realization around that was a mixture of concern and fear for the kid.
Yeah, and embarrassment.
And embarrassment.
I was embarrassed of him at times, and I'm no longer embarrassed of him.
Well, you talk a little bit about that moment you had with that guy.
Yeah, a guy came up to me and said, is he going to get over this? And I said, what? You know, jumping up and down, acting the way he acts.
But you knew what he was talking about, right?
I knew what he was talking about, but I wanted him to tell me.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's your kid.
Yeah.
What am I going to say? No, he's not going to get over it.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't say anything to him. I wish I had, but at the time, I wasn't confident enough in myself and him, Liam, to deal with it the way I should have dealt with it. But people do that all the time. See, the thing about Liam is there's no physicality, there's no physical cue that tells you he's different. He's not in a wheelchair, he doesn't have any muscular dysfunction. He doesn't have anything as a physical... See, if we see people with a physical cue, you know I'm going to have to deal with this a little differently.
Right.
But Liam's not that way. You start talking to him, and it takes you about a minute to realize, okay, well, there's something a little different happening here. A little skew. You know, and that throws people off. There are people who just blow him right off, don't want anything to do with him. And I was embarrassed of him at times, because he's my kid, and we'd be standing places, and he'd be bouncing up and down, and I'd be, dude, stop bouncing.
Yeah.
But then I had this moment with him, this really revealing moment, where I was working really hard with him. I mean, I rewrote textbooks for him. I just wanted everything to work. And I had this really telling moment with him where he basically told me I was doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And he told me he was doing the best he could, and that he was really trying hard, and why was I so angry all the time? And I thought, shit, I'm not doing this right.
Yeah.
So I just stepped back, and I let him be himself, and I watched what he did, and I sort of followed him. And now we have a way we get, I mean, he's my bud, and I understand him better. It was me, it wasn't him.